just how much of an issue or how worried should we be about China versus Taiwan?
Thanks, Tom. I think we've seen this kind of trend of issues and challenges between the U.S. and Taiwan for the last few years. I mean, you certainly can't forget the bluff and bluster of the Trump administration and a lot of the issues that came about there. I do think, what we've seen for the most part in China's response to the events of the last week are in line with some of the measured responses that they've taken to some of the threats previously. It does seem like the U.S. is certainly holding back and letting China essentially blow off steam as a result of Speaker Pelosi's visit last week. But there are a number of newer sanctions that the U.S. have imposed, albeit quietly, that could further ratchet up tensions again. These include bans on imports from Xinjiang related to concerns on forced labor. But I think it is important to note, especially in a time where we're just watching the continued invasion of Ukraine from Russia, that China isn't Russia as it relates to some of what could happen as a next step.
China isn't Russia, and it's probably a good thing because China is a much more formidable economic force right now than Russia is. There's got to be at least a hint of caution that investors have to approach this with, because we know that between China and Taiwan, they do control a lot of the technology supply chain specifically, as well as others. The business impact is going to be big. What exactly are you telling clients now about how they should navigate this, given those tensions and supply chain issues that are already strained?
I think we've already seen a move towards supply chain resiliency and working with clients to look for alternative sources. I think when you look at the semiconductor space, especially between China and Taiwan and the volume of production that's made there, that would be a difficult challenge to replace in the interim. But we are seeing companies that are preemptively developing exit plans for Taipei, much like they did for Ukraine. I do think some of those might be preemptive, obviously, as I think the concern might be, again, still of threats beyond actions from a China standpoint. I mean, let's also remember, China and the U.S. are the largest trading partners of the other. So I do think that China has recognized that there's limited benefit to them from continued escalation, much like they've stayed off the sidelines of the Ukraine-Russia situation for the last few months to further antagonizing essentially the West and most of humanity. So, there is caution and worry to watch what's happening, but I think Taiwan is just one of many issues included with delisting threats for Chinese listed companies in the U.S. and additional import bans that could further escalate things. But I'm not sure if the situation in Taiwan is enough to really spook investors in isolation.